do we mean by no toxic additives? Additives are very common in commercial winemaking. Wine companies are allowed to use thickeners, dyes, flavoring, sterilizers, defoaming agents, and a whole lot more to create a certain type of product. In fact, the FDA approves 76 additives for use in winemaking in the United States. We here at Dry Farm Wines only work with natural growers who share a philosophy of pure wine made without these industrial additives. We vet every grower before working with them to make sure their ethos aligns with ours, to make wine as pure as possible as nature intends.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst show. Hey, it's a show where pounds are shed. There they go. Disease is dead, and where you can be set free from your health problems. I'm your co-host, Dr. Aaron Ernst, along with Dr. Chris Demczar.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And man, I just love prepping for our topic today. We are in the midst of a series on how to fix your heart and its related conditions: blood pressure, cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, coronary artery disease, blockage, all this stuff.
Right.
Naturally, using more holistic and or functional approaches. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about the nerve connection to your heart. Last week, we talked about the gut connection to your heart and the revolutionary studies that were done showing if you have a heart problem, and they didn't care what kind. It was like blood pressure, could be heart disease, plaquing, you name it, even elevated cholesterols. It is because of some sort of a gut issue. And today we're going to talk about another revolutionary connection between these things also cause heart disease, and it falls into a bucket of the cardiovascular toxins, which when you open this bucket up, you're going to see is mostly heavy metals. And so we have to talk about this concept of heavy metal toxicity and how it affects heart functionality. And again, we're going to come at you guys not just with colloquial phrases like, oh, mercury can cause heart disease. We're going to show you evidence in the research that says mercury causes heart disease.
Right.
We're going to show you
research.
Yeah. Oh, here's one that says not just mercury, but also cadmium.
Yep.
And then we have another one that talks about the fact that it's also, look at this, the unexpected results of chelation, which is removing metals, and how you can change diabetics and cardiovascular patients for the good when you just simply get rid of metals.
And so if you're going, whoa, oh my gosh, how do I find out more about this? How do I know if I've got toxins inside of me that need to get removed? What are my mercury levels? What are my cadmium levels? Well, guys, it's all in this heart health ebook that Dr. Ernst himself put together.
Yep.
And if you haven't gotten it yet, it can be yours now, free. So text in the word heart, your name and email to 704-906-2727. 2094, so you can start exploring how you can figure out if there are any heavy metals, any other toxins in your body that are affecting your heart health today.
Yep. So that's your name and your email, the word heart. So we know you want this ebook. And the number again is 704-906-2094. Inside that ebook is one of the greatest tests that you guys can ever get. Very inexpensive, done in the comfort of your home. And it will show you if you have any metals, aluminum, antimony, arsenic, barium, etc., cadmium, lead. If you see on your test an elevation into the yellow or the red zones, and if you're on our live streams, you can see this test. If you're listening through the airways, you have to get the ebook because we have a sample test. We have how to read the test. We have even where you can get the test, and you can start to learn like, oh my gosh, do you see this person here? That's high arsenic, that's high lead, that's high antimony, high aluminum. This is a person who has heavy metal toxicities. And if they came to you and said, well, doc, I'm struggling with my cholesterol, I've got blood pressure issues, as a holistic physician, I know what you would say.
Yeah, let's say we got to test and then get these heavy metals out of you.
So here's the deal, guys. The research is clear, and we have publications dating back to 2016, 2015, and even a international symposium that was held last year where they're showing evidence that if you have a heart issue, there's a high, like 80, 90% likelihood that you also have toxic heavy metals. So today we're going to talk about what are the big boys? What are the ones we need to pay attention to? Where the heck do they come from? How do they get inside of you? And what does the current trends in medicine say you should do if you have high blood pressure, cholesterol problems, palpitations, or arrhythmias? Because it's going to come as a shock. Let's just blow the lid on this. What do they say they should be doing? Pay attention to your metals and get rid of it. Yet, let me ask you a question. Okay, the last time you went to a cardiologist, did they say, hey, the blood pressure and the palpitations, the arrhythmias, the high cholesterol could be because you have mercury and lead and cadmium in your body?
Never.
No. Okay, so that's what we need to break down for you guys. So again, if you want all the details for today's show, it's summarized in the book. We have the testing. You can see that right here. We have the protocols on what to do, like how do you get rid of this stuff. 704-906-2094. The word heart, your name, and your email, and it is yours. All right, so why don't we start with the big boy here?
Let's do it.
Okay, because let me ask you a question. See if you can answer this. Mercury and cadmium are known to physically damage the heart. And in this study, we found out it says it can cause vascular disease. It can cause hypertension, which is high blood pressure. It can cause coronary artery disease, which is the congestion, the plaquing, the blockage. And it can actually make you have a heart attack. Okay, so if these two metals can cause all of this, where does mercury come from?
Yeah.
And where does cadmium come from?
Yeah, well, so in nature, right, because of modern processes, we find that we get mercury if we eat lots of seafood and fish. But even more commonly, especially in an industrialized society like us here in America, lots of people have mercury in their dental fillings.
Yes. And you also find it's a stabilizer to vaccinations.
Yep.
So, it is what it is, guys. They use it because it keeps the virus and or the particles inert.
Right. And
stabilized.
A lot of the times, they talk about there's two different types of mercury, right? You've got your ethyl and you've got your methyl, and those mean different things. One's natural, one's not natural, and doesn't matter. It still stimulates the same process within your body. It can still affect you in the same way from a toxic standpoint. Our bodies are not meant to deal with mercury.
Yes. And in fairness, if we're seeing high levels of mercury, like in this sample patient here, the first thought we have is we have to ask the question, do you have the amalgamated silver fillings? And most people we test that are this high, like that sample, will say, yeah. And so just understand this. If you have a tooth which is made out of bone, very porous still, correct?
Right.
And you set inside that tooth a liquid metal that is amalgamated, meaning mixed with other metals.
Yep.
That is then hardened, and think that your tooth is not going to absorb that. I don't know where you're from, because bones absorb things, so does skin. So if I put a transdermal nicotine patch on my hand, I'm going to have nicotine in my blood.
That's right.
If I put mercury in my tooth, I'm eventually going to have mercury in my blood and my nerve system, because the roots of a tooth have a nerve and a blood supply.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is I've talked to dentists specifically about this. I'll go and I'll tell them, hey, I don't want to have to, and I'll admit I've had fillings, and they've been like, yeah, but no worries, we're going to do this silver filling, and I've told them about the mercury exposure and the other metals, and I don't want those metals to be able to get into my body because they can be harmful. They're like, no, it's not going to affect you. It's not, even if it leached in a little bit, it'll just be to the area around just where the tooth is. And I'm like, what? The second it's inside my body can then make it and allow it to travel wherever my body takes it.
Yeah.
My body will do a lot of different things to try to deal with it. A lot of those are not going to end up being very good in the long run. So I don't want that toxin anywheres on me from the get-go.
Yep. So let's teach you guys something today, because of course the question is, do you have heavy metals? And I'm going to be 1000% transparent. We've run probably thousands of these heavy metals tests. They're part of a standard intaking package we have, and it's in the 90 to 95th percentile that patients come back with a positive heavy metal.
And I just want to add, how many of you listening are here local in Charlotte? How many of you are drinking Charlotte tap water?
Oh yeah.
You've got heavy metals in your water if you're not filtering them out.
Yep. So take a peek at what this study is. So this was last year's 13th International Symposium of the Institute of Functional Medicine. The title says, The Role of Mercury and Cadmium Heavy Metals in Vascular Hypertension, Coronary Artery, and Myocardial Infarction, written by an MD of all things. And let's just read some summary things and maybe you can translate, right? Because the biggest thing is we have to teach you guys, okay? We talked about this last week. The studies are out, and yet most people will go, I just don't understand what it means, and then we lose the effect of the study.
Yep, exactly.
So they say this, in summary. Number one, mercury and cadmium and other heavy metals like aluminum and antimony, arsenic, barium, uranium, all the ones we test for, has an ability to bind to sulfhydryl groups, which is a sulfur-based molecule, thus inactivating enzymes, amino acids, and antioxidants to the degree that they decrease defense and they increase oxidative stress. Could you translate that into English?
Let me use a body part that all of us have to make this really easy to understand. We're going to use the liver. And so you mentioned the word sulfhydryl group. So in the liver, the liver's primary role is to detox a lot of the stuff that we put into our body. And to do that, there's a lot of reactions that have to continuously repeat, right? Just like a car engine has, the pistons have to constantly go up and down to be able to generate the force, to be able to keep the car moving. So these reactions are continuously happening in the liver. They require this sulfur reaction over and over and over again. So if you've got a heavy metal in your body that stops that ability for that sulfur reaction to occur, you've just shut down your liver. Just like that. It was that quick
and so
and easy.
It says you inactivate enzymatic reactions that include amino acids, building blocks,
proteins,
sulfur-based, antioxidants, glutathione, N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid. These are nutrients that your liver uses to get rid of toxins. So do you hear what happens? Mercury basically says, liver, turn off. Now, number two, mercury induces mitochondrial dysfunction with a reduction in ATP. What does that mean?
Yeah, so now your body has less energy to be able to do the things that it needs to do.
Okay, then it says it depletes glutathione.
Yep, which is one of the primary antioxidants needed for the liver to help detoxify.
Then it says it increases lipid peroxidation.
Yep, so basically you start to have a fatty liver, you start to have bad fats that are going to change chemical conformation, and they can't do what they need to anymore.
Which would mean your triglycerides elevates, your LDL cholesterol elevates,
bad cholesterol.
Total cholesterol goes up, and it increases oxidative stress.
Right, which is more damage to your body, more damage to the wall of the liver, to the wall of your arteries, to the wall of your heart.
Now it says the overall vascular effects of mercury include oxidative stress,
which is what we just said.
inflammation of the vessel.
More damage to the vessel, which is going to lead to, this is where you guys should have been on the radio show last weekend. We talked about this. What happens when there's inflammation to the wall of a blood vessel or to the heart wall? That there's going to be
cholesterol and the white blood cells move towards it.
Exactly. Damage leads to white blood cells, which are the glue for the cholesterol, and the cholesterol forms the plaque. The cholesterol is not the problem. The damage originally is the problem.
Then it says vascular smooth muscle dysfunction.
Yep. So we have 3 types of muscles in our body. Smooth muscle is what surrounds all of the blood vessels in our body, and it's needed, right? Our arteries don't just hang out and they're just flimsy all day as we pass blood through them. They need to be able to contract and constrict and dilate. That's what allows blood pressure changes to occur, and it's a very integrated and very succinct system. And so if you lose the ability for that smooth muscle to do what it needs to do, you're going to dilate the blood vessel. That's going to potentially decrease blood pressure, which can cause a lot of problems.
Then it says it's an immune dysfunctional, like it creates immune dysfunction and mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yep, and that makes sense because we were already talking about how it's going to shut down the liver. So mercury and cadmium will shut down the liver, will shut down the antioxidant production. Well, that's going to allow more of this oxidative stress to cause damage, which will lead to an immune response. But the immune response isn't going to be one that you're expecting. And then if it's one that's chronically there for days, months, years, that's going to cause a massive shift in your immune response. And you're going to notice that, well, your body's spending so much energy, what little energy it has left, trying to deal with this heavy metal, that even when a virus or bacteria starts becoming a problem, it can't deal with that anymore.
Then listen to this. It says mercury increases hypertension, so blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease.
That's your plaquing.
Myocardial infarction, so physical heart attacks.
Death of heart wall tissue.
Watch this. Cerebral vascular events,
stroke,
generalized atherosclerosis,
hardening of the arteries,
right? Ooh, that's 1, 2, 3 jinx. Renal dysfunction,
kidney problems,
proteinuria.
Yeah, so that's proteins in the urine.
And a breakdown, and I'll call it pathophysiological biochemical dysfunctions, which would mean all systems fail.
Right. And that makes sense because we already talked about if protein building blocks are being disrupted, if there's now random proteins being broken down. So not even the building process is one half of it, but the breakdown process of proteins is the other half of it. And both are affected by these heavy metals. And so then we already talked about the enzymatic pathways being a problem. So it makes sense that then generally we're going to have these biochemical reactions where your body does 20 million different things trying to figure out how do we correct this problem, but it can't fix the root cause on its own.
We're only halfway into the effects of just one metal. Guys, do you see how detrimental heavy metals can be? Now, I'll check this out. Mercury diminishes the protective effects of omega-3 and fish oils.
And we know that we need omega-3s because there's a very important process that occurs with the omega-3 fatty acids in our body compared to the, I will call, conventional fatty acids, which are more of your omega-6s or your non-omegas that are not helpful for your body at all. Those will lead to way more of the oxidative stress that was mentioned beforehand.
So hold up. Cardiovascular, heart-healthy fish oils may not work at all if you have mercury toxicity.
Exactly. So then even when you go to your doctor and they say, oh, well, they do the smart thing to put you on an omega-3 supplement, but because you've got these heavy metals in you, it doesn't even matter.
So how many times have you heard from a patient, Dr. Demczar, Dr. Ernst, I don't understand. How can my markers be so far off balance? I take fish oils, I take glutathione, I take my multivitamins, I take my minerals. How is it that I'm not healthy despite the fact of me taking everything I should? Because, guys, metals interfere with the functionality of what you need to be de-inflamed and de-stressed.
Exactly.
Now, listen to this. This is a huge one, okay? We'll understand this, but we're going to have to translate this. Mercury, cadmium, and other heavy metals increase the urination of epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. This effect increases blood pressure and is clinically due to toxicities from heavy metals. Yeah,
so those are hormones that are being secreted in your urine.
But what kind of hormones are those? They're very specific hormones.
Right.
They're gut and brain hormones that regulate all major functionality of how you think, how you feel, how you interact with your cell functionality. So if I urinate out all my feel-good hormones, how am I going to feel?
Not good at all. Drained, down, depressed.
And then we go to our doctor and they go, well, your blood pressure's high and your cholesterols are elevated, and they put you on more medications. And sadly, you've now increased your toxicity because, number one, you didn't deal with the fact that mercury was what was causing it. Number two, you didn't deal with the fact that you're excreting things that you probably didn't even know. And that's why in our ebook, guys, we show you how you can't just rely on one test. You can't just get your metals tested and go, okay, God, that must be the cause. There's something that's preventing you from excreting the metals in the first place, which is a gut dysfunction, which can come from a nerve dysfunction. So that's why in this ebook, we go through all the tests that need to be done. And more specifically, what can you do now? So if you'd like the ebook, it's free. Text the word HEART, your name and your email to 704-906-2094. Look, guys, we have the foods that are good for your heart. We have the nutrients that are good for your heart. We have the ones that you need to focus on because of the gut-heart connection. We have the tests that you need to do. We have the explanations of the nerve system connection. We have the parasympathetic, sympathetic maps that are road mapped out. The metals as being a hidden cause. Guys, everything is in here. And as a bonus, you get to join us for the masterclass that we're doing on February 11th. That's like right around the corner.
It is. It's only a couple weekends away.
So it's your name, the word heart, your email, and as a bonus, Dr. Chris and I are going to start sending information to you guys. Hey, try this week. See what happens. And what you'll find is you can have major effects take place within your tissues, within your body, and start lowering cholesterol, lowering blood pressure, and even losing weight.
Or on the flip side, let's say you start doing some of the things that we're telling you to do and nothing happens. Oh my gosh, what could that mean? You've got a heavy metal that didn't even know about. You need to do the testing and you need to get the heavy metal out so that you can let your body heal on its own.
That's right.
If you have the heavy metal and you let it stay in you, you will not be able to heal.
So let's go back because I want to read this because this is just revolutionary, okay? So this is a medical doctor again. What's his name? Dr. Houston, Mark Houston, okay? The study's called The Role of Mercury and Cadmium Heavy Metals in Vascular Disease, Hypertension, Coronary Heart Disease, and Myocardial Infarction. I'm going to go to his final sentence. This is the end of the article. It's his global recommendations, and it says this. Heavy metal toxicity, especially mercury and cadmium, so those are two big ones.
Right.
And we'll talk about where cadmium comes from in a second, should be evaluated in any patient with hypertension, cardiovascular heart disease, or any vascular disease. Now read this final statement. What does it say?
Specific testing for acute and chronic toxicity and total body burden using hair, toenail, urine, serum, etc. Different ways of collecting where the toxins would be. With baseline and provoked evaluation should be done. So guys, there's an MD basically saying this. If you have heart disease, if you have high blood pressure, palpitations, arrhythmias, plaquing of your arteries, you name it, you should have this test done. Yep.
It's a body burden test to find out, are you elevated? And if they are elevated, it is a connective root cause, which means you now need to get them out. So the second half of our show today, we're going to talk about how do you get them out. But you've got to understand, where do they come from?
Right. And can you see, so it's not good enough to just say, I'll just keep taking my blood pressure medication. It's not good enough to say, my doctor put me on this, I'm taking this fish oil now because it's going to help protect my heart, protect my gut, whatever you've been told. Sure, that may be a great thing for you to do, but you've got to know, is there a heavy metal? If you've been told you have some sort of heart disease, some sort of vascular disease, you're at risk for heart, you're at risk for a stroke. And I'll tell you guys, a lot of the conventional testing, it's not research approved to be able to give you an actual risk. And we should talk about that too, second half of the show. If you want to get one singular test to know your absolute risk for heart attack or stroke, what is that test?
Yeah.
But if you've been told you have a risk, you need to figure out, do you have any heavy metals in your body right now that you need to eliminate and get rid of?
And then watch this, right? So, okay, let's pretend this is my test, all right? So it comes back, and again, I'm reading just this one here. This is a sample and an example. My aluminum is high. My antimony is high. My arsenic is really high. My lead is borderline high.
Yep.
My mercury is as high as my arsenic. So the top two for me, if this was my test, is arsenic and lead. So now, this is what I would do. I would seek out a functional physician who knows how to get rid of this. This is what we do for a living, guys.
Yeah.
And then I would ask this basic question. Where the heck did the mercury come from and the arsenic? So the assessment, right? So clinical round of questions. Do you have any fillings? Yes. Well, there we know. Have you been vaccinated to any degree with flu shots or any other sort of vaccines that could use mercury as a stabilizer? Yes. Do you eat large fish? Like grouper and mahi-mahi, marlin, shark, tuna, ahi tuna steaks. Yes. Okay. So now we know that we need to make a change in the environment. We have to stop the exposure, but we also know what? You got to get this stuff out. And the process is called chelation. We're going to go deep into it when we come back from this commercial break. But there's other metals than just mercury. So like arsenic, by the way, is found in contaminated drinking water and a lot of rice products.
Yes.
Protein powders.
Yep.
So if you're using really low quality protein drinks and you eat a lot of rice, maybe it's arsenic. Cadmium is unique. It's found in car exhaust and also cigarettes.
Right.
So like mostly fumes that come from things. So if you are someone who sits in a ton of traffic, keeps your windows down, and possibly smokes, and you have high cadmium, we go, well, we're going to have to start changing your lifestyle habits and start chelating these metals.
And Dr. Ernst, earlier, a couple weeks ago, you had an amazing revolutionary discovery about where antimony comes from.
Yeah. So think of this, right? So antimony, classically how we were trained is it's in ceramics and batteries and people who weld and solder. But recently, there's been a shift in the ingredients used for flame retardants. So, the chairs that we sit on that are fabric-based, they don't want them to catch on fire, so they spray them with antimony oxide, which is a known flame retardant. And unfortunately today, all of our technology, the worst thing that could ever happen is if a battery explodes and catches on fire. So the iPads and your touch devices and your screens, they're all coated in very thin amounts of antimony oxide. So we're thumbing through our feeds and we're absorbing this stuff. And we're seeing more and more and more people with antimony, cadmium, aluminum, lead, and mercury at excessively high amounts. And they're going, I'm struggling to get better. And what do? We educate, we remove, and we let the body do its own thing. And healing comes as a result of the rest you give by decreasing the toxins.
Love it.
So we have a commercial break looming around us. So now's your chance, guys. Text the word HEART, your name and email, to grab our Heart Heal Thyself Masterclass Workbook. It has everything that you need to know in it. And then we go into major details specific for you on the event, which is a live broadcasted masterclass, February 11th. It's free. If you have high blood pressure, cholesterol, palpitations, arrhythmias, or any heart issues, 704-906-2094. The word HEART, your name, your email, hit send, and you're in the club.
That's right.
Hey, it's the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. We will be right back.
See you guys soon.
What if we told you coffee was good for you?
Coffee is the single highest source of antioxidants in the Western diet. More antioxidants than kale, more antioxidants than 70% dark chocolate, and more antioxidants than blueberries.
In fact, what if we told you that coffee is really good for you?
Research shows that 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day dramatically enhances performance in high-intensity exercise, improves memory, reaction times, and overall cognitive function, decreases risk of depression, promotes weight loss by boosting metabolic rates, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes up to 40%, decreases risk of liver cancer up to 71%, reduces risk of Parkinson's up to 30%, and decreases risk of Alzheimer's up to 65%. Overall, coffee drinkers live longer. People who drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day have about a 15% lower risk of premature mortality compared to people who don't drink coffee.
And what if we told you that the health benefits of coffee could actually be increased through conscious roasting, sourcing, and processing? Introducing Purity, a health-conscious coffee company. At Purity, We've brought together a world-class team to analyze every step in the production chain from cherry to cup. We make decisions with only one thing in mind. How can we make the healthiest coffee in the world? Here's our 3-step process. Step 1, we search the world for the highest quality organic green beans that meet our exacting standards. Way less than 1% of coffee worldwide fit our sourcing criteria. Step 2, we test, and test again to create a specific roasting protocol for each harvest that maximizes healthy compounds and minimizes toxins. Step 3, we nitrogen pack our coffee within 48 hours of roasting and deliver to your door every 2 weeks to ensure maximum freshness. The result is the ultimate coffee drinking experience. You'll not only taste the difference in our clean, healthy coffee, with Purity, you'll feel the difference.
Our coffee club members report a bright, alert lift with less jitters than regular coffee and much more gentle on the stomach.
Sign up for Purity today, and you'll never have to worry about your source for healthy coffee again.
To bring you the best natural wine the world has to offer, we've designed a fully curated membership program. Every selection you receive is different and unique. Every wine is picked by our wine team, lab tested for purity, and curated into a special box for your enjoyment. So how does the membership work? We offer 2 main options: a half case of 6 bottles or a full case of 12. You can request all reds, all whites, or a perfect split of both. Then you can set the frequency, monthly or every other month. We offer a similar simple membership for rosé and sparkling wines. After you choose these basic options, we'll do the rest. With every box we send you, we aim to present the greatest diversity of flavors, textures, and profiles. There's a healthy mix of the classics, but also rare varietals. We do this because natural wines taste different from their commercial counterparts. We want to share the best possible experience with you so you can discover new wines you love. And you can always reorder a wine that took your heart, or ask us to avoid certain profiles. The best part is, you don't need any wine knowledge to fully enjoy these boxes. We curate our selections to be enjoyed without worry. Ultimately, this is Dry Farm Wines. We are so grateful to be able to share the power of natural wines with you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the Ask Dr. Ernst show. I'm your co-host, Dr. Chris Demczar, along with Dr. Ernst himself.
Yeah, thank you.
We're having an amazing conversation about your heart health and toxins, and how toxins in your body can influence your heart, influence your entire body, and they can really confuse on your medical side. Your medical practitioner may think, oh my gosh, you have high blood pressure, you've got a risk for stroke, risk for heart attack, and the main culprit, the root cause that we're talking about today, is you really have a heavy metal that's shutting down some enzymatic pathway, shutting down some function that's leading to the blood pressure, leading to whatever the heart healthy issue to. And I think at the top of the hour, Dr. Ernst, we discussed how easy it is for you to be exposed to heavy metals in your life and not even realize it. It might be something that you are doing every single day that's adding heavy metals to your body, increasing that toxic burden. Your body can't handle it anymore because it's been happening for years.
Yes.
And you don't even realize that it's there.
Well, and let's look at what the research says. Okay, so there is evidence that because of the year various people were born, you're going to be exposed to things like mercury and lead at higher rates. So as an example, check this out, all right? The half-life of various known metals is extremely long. Like lead in your bones, 30 plus years before your body naturally gets rid of half of it. So at year 60, you got rid of 75% of it. So you'd have to live your entire life and let your body naturally excrete these metals. And that's why they become such a big deal. And one study showed here that anybody living in the United States between 1945 and 1980 has accumulated lead in their body, no matter how they think it got there or not, simply because we used to use lead in gasoline. We used to use it in paints. We used to use it in solder. We used to use it in all kinds of things. And the worst was the leaded gasolines, partly because the amount of lead that was sort of pumped into the atmosphere through the exhaust was quite large. So if you were alive in 1945, 1955, 1965, 1975, 1980, like I was, you got exposed to lead just by breathing air. So we figured it out in the late 70s. We removed lead from gasoline and paints and solders, but it takes years for this stuff to disappear. So if it was just in nature, it's usually, about maybe 7 to 10 years. But lead in your body can take as many as 30 years before it starts to get to a half point. So again, if I was born in 1970, I have to wait 30 years to get half of it out of me.
Right, not even all of it.
Doing nothing.
Right.
So now I'm 30 years old. And then at 60, I've got 75% of it out. At 90, I have 88% of it out.
Yep.
And at 120, I died, and guess what? I don't have to worry about it anymore. So the thing is that all this exposure we have is accumulative, and the question becomes, at what exposure amount do you get the effect? The research is showing it's different for everybody. So the challenge is we have known limits. We know that certain things need to be within the green zones, but you hit yellow, you should be having a heart attack, because you are going to. And if you hit red, you've got physical damage and disease. So it's so cool. Today we have technology. We can do a simple at-home hair test. We can find the amount of metals inside of you, and we can go, okay, it is what it is. Let's get them out, which we're going to talk about now. And let's make sure you're not exposing yourselves to them, which is learning where these metals come from.
Yeah.
And if you want to know where do they come from, it's in the ebook. If you want to know how to get rid of them, it's in the ebook. It's called Heart Heal Thyself. It's the workbook towards you healing your heart by yourself. Become your own cardiovascular doctor, and you can get it today for free. Text the word heart, your name, and your email to 704-906-2094. That's again 704-906-2094. The word heart, your name, and email. And again, as a bonus, we have a masterclass coming up in a couple weeks on February 11th. It's a Saturday. It's at 10 a.m. in the morning, where we're going to teach you, specific to your condition, how do you solve this once and for all. All free. 704-906-2094.
Perfect.
So let's talk about this, all right? So we know mercury comes from the fillings we have in our mouth, the fish we eat, the vaccines we've received, and we know it's neurotoxic. We know it's cardiovascular toxic. We talked about how cadmium comes from cigarette smoke, car exhaust, etc. Aluminum is found in our deodorants, the pots and pans that we use, the foil we use. Antimony is found in flame retardants and in contaminated drinking water. So, obviously, we're all being exposed to this.
Day in and day out.
So how do we go about getting rid of these heavy metals? Are there some natural things that we can do? And then there's some things we can take? I'm going to say yes to both, but I'd like to review, Dr. Chris, if you would back me up on this, the natural things that we can use, right now, to help encourage the excretion. And then we're going to go into the targeted therapies. But I got to caution targeted therapies.
Yeah.
You can't do it until you have a test, because we have to know which metals are high. So right now we can start giving you things that anybody could do. Like your 7-year-old could start doing these things. So why don't we go through how to turn on active natural heavy metal chelation, and then we'll talk about therapeutic.
Right. So we have to think of these heavy metals as they're in a competition. and they're in competition with what's already naturally happening in your body. And so at the top of that, we talked about some of those things: the oxidative stress, the free radical damage that can occur, and the antioxidants that are diminished when the heavy metals come in and they compete to do the same job or shut down what should be the job of the antioxidants to prevent the oxidative stress damage to your body. So if you want to compete back with the heavy metals,
you have to kind of fight back.
Yep,
it's
to fight back.
They did this, and so you need to
throw
this
your
to
left
them.
hook.
Yes.
You've got to overpower them with an overabundance of your antioxidant response. So a lot of the natural things that you can do are to boost the antioxidants that you have in your body. So you can start with leafy green vegetables, such as your dandelion greens, your mustard greens, your arugula, broccoli sprouts. So notice I said broccoli sprouts, because those are going to help to shut down the inflammation that's occurring, but it's also going to help to fire that left hook back at the heavy metals that are in your body.
And these are all natural glutathione producers, because one thing we know mercury and lead and cadmium do is they shut down the sulfhydryl groups in the liver, which lowers glutathione, which is a natural antioxidant. Be careful taking glutathione because it's usually destroyed in your intestines. So we eat the foods that are naturally stimulatory for producing glutathione within the body.
Yeah, that's a really good call. Even though we know that one of the primary antioxidants, glutathione, in the liver is so important for that COMT pathway that we talked about before, you cannot just say, well, I'll just flood myself with glutathione, because it'll cause so many other issues. There's a lot of other specific things that need to know, and this is why you need to test. This is why, if you haven't gotten it already, you need to get the Heart Healthy ebook, because it's going to give you what you naturally need to do. You don't need to just throw some targeted therapy at it. As you can see, glutathione is naturally found in our body, but it could be so destructive. Just like the mercury. Anytime you're told, oh, well, there's certain natural types of mercury, no, there's not. And even if it's found in nature, it's not natural for it to be found in your body.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll keep on going. Herbs and spices like cilantro, oregano, rosemary, thyme, ginger, turmeric, cinnamon, all things that are going to help boost the antioxidant presence in your body and shut down those toxins. And they're going to prevent, on the flip side of that too, you want to try to shut down the opportunity for toxins to latch on to certain enzymes and certain pathways, and having enough of an antioxidant supply in your body will stop that latching process, so to speak. So your main antioxidant vitamins, A, C, E, and then mineral selenium. So any food that's rich in vitamin C, like certain fruits and other vegetables that are high in vitamin C, are going to help add that antioxidant potential. So we're talking about things like your cruciferous vegetables, talking about broccoli, certain berries, kiwi, papaya, guava, and bell peppers.
So do you notice how what you're basically describing is the kind of diet we need to do to encourage detoxification is just eat real food.
Right.
Like fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, focusing on a little bit more of the higher antioxidant versions, which you're going to find in the colored things, right? So the oranges and the yellows and the purples and the blues.
Right.
And also in greens. And there's something unique about a green that works really well. Cilantro. See, we get a lot of people saying like, well, I use cilantro. Excuse me. I use spirulina. I use chlorella, all those microgreen algae.
Microgreens.
And they're binders and chelators for heavy metals. So I'm good. Okay, listen. If you had low levels of metals, that would work because they naturally help to encourage the expression and excretion of them. But if you're coming back with like mercury in the red, mercury in the yellow, good luck having cilantro yank enough mercury and lead and cadmium out of you, because that would be like the equivalent of like, okay, so I want to eat the food that I'll find the volume of my multivitamin.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good
so
luck.
ready? I got 2 multivitamins. I'm going to take both of those. I've got A, C, E, D, K, all this stuff, 500% volume because it's compressed and packed. I would have to eat like 16 heads of broccoli and 14 bags of carrots and 6 apples and 2 pounds of strawberries to equal probably 1 capsule of a multivitamin.
Exactly.
So, like, I get it. Like, people always challenge us. Well, Dr. Ernst, I drink cilantro juice every day and I take a spirulina capsule. I'm good for heavy metals. Oh, yeah? Prove it. Get the simple test that costs maybe I think it's like $100. Get a test that shows us that you can do this. And if your levels are down and low, good. And I hope I don't burst a bubble. A lot of the chlorellas and the spirulinas and the cilantros are grown in an environment that's high in heavy metals in the first place. And because they bind metals, you may actually be increasing your metal toxicity by
Yep.
taking low quality, non-organic cilantro,
Exactly.
spirulina, and chlorella.
Yep, really good call. And I just want to add 2 more things. So we talked, and you mentioned this, the sulfahydride groups can be shut down, and heavy metals will shut that down. So how do you add in more sulfur to your diet? Garlic and onions.
Yeah.
So important. And
And
so
you know what's amazing? When you
Go ahead.
saute garlic with onions, it just has that aroma
Yes.
that makes you want to eat it. It's
Mhm.
almost kind of like
salivating.
your body. I get to, you line up 1,000 people and you saute onions and garlic in a kitchen. Guess what? All of them are going to say, "Oh, that smells so good."
Yep.
And you know what? That the reason that is that way, because they need it. It's kind of like, you crave what you need.
Right.
And you love what tastes good that you need.
Exactly.
And that's why a lot of people are like, I was so amazing when I walk by an Italian restaurant. You're smelling the garlic, you're smelling the onions, and you need that.
Yes, exactly. So now we got to talk about the flip side, because now there's foods to avoid. Right? We have
Yes.
things we want to add in to try to compete, throw the left hook at the heavy metal. Well, you want to avoid certain things like farmed fish, which typically these fish are going to be grown to be larger because it's, hey, more food, that's better, right? And that means more heavy metals. In addition to that, a lot of farmed fish are going to have high levels of what I'll call waste products, toxic waste products from factories and from other
In the tanks in and of
industry.
themselves, because they're cramming like, I don't know,
hundreds of
thousands of fish in this little environment. And unfortunately, farmed fish aren't fed real fish foods.
Right.
They're fed
Some
pellets
pellet
of
grain
corn
diet,
usually. We've even been to and interviewed some fish farmers, and they'll say stuff like, "Oh yeah, we give them ground corn and corn oil and stuff because we find they get bigger
Yeah.
if we feed them the foods that make them inflamed." And see, you guys don't go to the grocery store and go, "Hey, fishmongerer and butcher, what's the health of the animals? Like, were they grade A healthy?" No, you just look at it and you go, "Looks good to me. It weighs such a weight," and you buy it by the pound.
Exactly. Yep. And so I wanted to mention this too, because farm fish, the water quality, there's a lot of dumping of toxic waste in it, and that's called PCBs. And so PCBs struck a chord with me. I grew up in the Hudson Valley in New York, and in the Hudson River,
Yeah.
there was a large issue. When I can remember in 4th grade, we did a study on PCBs that were being dumped from industrial chemical plants into the Hudson River, and it was polluting all of, obviously, just the entire wildlife, all the fish that were there. And we noticed over the years, the studies were done that there were less and less fish in the areas around where the PCBs were being dumped, because they couldn't survive. They were dying.
Yeah.
But that's introducing more toxins to the fish that then were being caught and were being eaten, specifically by people down in New York City, which was quite a bit away from me. So you gotta be so careful with the food that you're choosing to consume. And then you have to know if you have a food allergen as well. How many people would say, "Yeah, I'm allergic to this, I'm allergic to that"? Well, what that really means, and we don't have to go too deep into the weeds with this, is that there is now a neurological response or a neurological issue that's causing an immune response to the food that you're eating. So that's a whole nother thing that needs to be addressed before we can even really say, "Hey, we're going to get these heavy metals out of you."
And it's not just the allergies, it's also sensitivities, because the challenge becomes, if you eat a food that you're slightly allergic to, you're going to inflame your intestines. That leads to a gut leak. It leads to then part number 2 of heart disease. So watch how heavy metals and the effects they have can irritate your intestines and cause a gut leak. Heavy metals can cause nerve interferences, which can cause a gut leak. You disconnect the whole connection of the nerve system to the heart to the gut. Can you see how you take last week's show, the week show before, where we talked nerve, heart, and you put metals involved in it? The unfortunate reality is it becomes this
trifecta.
mire of a soup of just where one leads to another and another leads to, because when your gut leaks, you lose the ability for detoxification. So then the metals start to get worse. You don't excrete them. They make the gut leak worse, which gets worse. And then the heart starts to become inflamed. Cardiovascular disease is this whole all-encompassing. And your doctor says, take this one pill, which will solve all problems. And they're so undereducated as to
not
the
possible.
cause.
Right. And so just to add to this, because I know you, Dr. Ernst, you want to jump into the therapeutic ways to target and remove heavy metals from someone's body. But just to complete this picture for how naturally can you help support the detoxifying process in your own body, well, what is the main detoxifying organ in your body? Your liver.
Yeah.
And if your liver is already overwhelmed with heavy metals, with other toxins, with a leaky gut, with a poorly functioning nervous system where the signals aren't being sent properly from the liver to the brain. You know the liver is not going to do its job. So how can you support the liver even more? Stop giving yourself things or consuming foods that are going to just increase that burden even more. So giving yourself a rest, whether it's through a water fast or whether it's through some other method of consuming less so that you have more time to rest, but also stop consuming alcohol. Alcohol is the number one contributor of shutting down the conversion process of your liver to be able to do the detoxifying things that it's supposed to.
Yep. So that's all the stuff you guys can do naturally. Now, let's say you are in the woods of dealing with this and you run this test and it comes back positive and you end up seeing high levels of, say, aluminum or antimony or mercury or lead, and you're going, all right, I'm going to clean up my environment, I'm going to decrease my exposure, but I got to get this stuff out now. Entered into the world of what's called chelation therapy, and this typically has to be guided and done through either a holistic physician, a functional doctor. There are a few medical doctors who are now offering chelation therapies, but note that it's requiring monitoring and maintenance, right? What is the word chelate? It technically means to use one product to search out for a toxin, tag it to be stuck to that product for the safe elimination. So let me give an example, right? So EDTA, chelation, it is ethyl diamendyl triacetic acid. I probably butchered that, but anyway, EDTA is a molecule that can be given to you either through a suppository, through oral methods, or an IV that is known to bind metals like mercury and aluminum and lead and cadmium. So for example, if you have high levels of mercury, aluminum, lead, cadmium, etc., and you go to a physician who is trained, like we are, in safe chelation processes, we'll give you small amounts of this molecule so that it can go through and grab these metals and bind them specifically so they don't get released. Then you either urinate or defecate them out. Typically, the goal would be you do this for a 3 or 4 month window. And then what do we do, guys? Well, we repeat this test and we see these markers start to decrease in their intensity, and we know that you're removing it. Okay? You can use zeolites as a chelator. You can use EDTA as a chelator. You can even use binding products like activated charcoal and other fulvites and fulvics. So if you're going like, God, that sounded like Greek to me. Well, they're all described and explained in the ebook, Heart Heal Thyself. You can grab it now. It's free. Text the word HEART, your name and email to 704-906-2094. The chelation process is described under step 1, remove toxins. And then we have to also look at it and say, sometimes when you use these chelators and binders, you get an effect. So watch this. Why does it require monitoring from a physician? Well, if you're taking high blood pressure pills because you have high blood pressure, we identify a metal that's involved in that high blood pressure. We give you a low-dose chelator. What can be the effect?
Your blood pressure can tank because the metal that was causing the problem in the first place is now gone.
And then if you keep taking the medication that you were prescribed, the risk is you're now medicating a healthier blood pressure and things can drop very rapidly. So you need to have some sort of physician's monitoring, conversations with your prescriber so that you know what to do. And this is why the masterclass is so important. We're going to show you these are the steps you need to do. You have to find out if this is involved. If it is, here's what you do. Find out if the gut is leaking. If it is, here's what you do. Find out if you have metals. If it is, here's what you do. And by becoming a self-educated, self-healing individual with a coach, all things are possible. And I say this to say we've seen blood pressure drop in 6 or 8 weeks. We've seen diabetes clear. And watch this, right? So as we kind of wrap up our show today, the article that I pulled says heavy metals, cardiovascular disease, and the unexpected benefits of chelation therapy. There's the word I just talked about. The unexpected benefit of you going to a holistic practitioner, letting them target your toxins and pull them. Listen to what happens when a diabetic went to a holistic physician, did chelation therapy, and then they started tracking progress, right? There was a 41% reduction in all negative effects of having diabetes. Give us a couple negative effects of having diabetes for a long term.
Yeah, that's, having paresthesia or neuralgia down in your feet, or it's having
Neuropathies, right?
neuropathy in your feet, or retinopathy in your eyes.
Yep. Obesity, cardiovascular disease. I don't know if you guys know this or not. Diabetes is like the disease that sets the tone for everything else. It's the fire that you stoked that is now hot and just waiting for you to throw logs on there for an explosion to take place.
Yeah.
So typically diabetics end up with other major heart effects and other major health effects. Yet when they chelated these diabetics, because by the way, heavy metals can cause diabetes by interfering with the insulin receptor, 41% reduction in all known health effects. Check this out. A 52% reduction in heart attacks. So again, what's a major downstream effect of having diabetes? Heart disease. They chelated, they pulled the metals out of these diabetics, and 51% reduction in heart disease took place. So what does that tell us? Metals are connected to heart disease. Metals are connected to diabetes. And if you have them, there's going to be a major issue. Look at this, 43% relative reduction in the risk of dying. So hold up. I chelate metals. I've got a 43% lower chance of dying. I've got a 40% reduction in my relative risks for all massive effects. I have a 52% risk in my rates of having heart disease. And they said that was unexpected. We did not expect this. Yet functionally, we would be like, oh, that's pretty expected
normal,
to
yeah.
me. If you have toxic heavy metals that are interfering with nerve function and hormone function and gut function and heart function and brain function, getting them out, you would expect the body to do a great thing for you.
That's right.
You should expect healing. But yet, see, so many of us are kind of like, well, I don't know if I can heal. I don't know if my condition can get better. My doctor says I'm going to have to take this thing for the rest of my life. If you don't know your root causes, how can you expect your body to heal? It would be like expecting my car to drive and perform great functions, but I forgot to put fuel in it. Okay, so just do what you need to let your body heal. And that's the event that we have coming up. What is it? I think in like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks.
2 weekends. Yep.
So 2 weekends from today, February 11th, we have our masterclass on solving cardiovascular heart issues. We have the Heart Heal Thyself Masterclass ebook. It's the, I'll call it workbook of everything you need to do. You can even start today. Name the word heart, your email, texted to 704-906-2094, and it's yours. 704-906-2094.
I just had this thought. How many of you have ever let your check engine light just hang out for weeks or months or years on end?
These days, very rarely, right?
That wouldn't be a very smart thing to do, because you know that there's something seriously wrong with your car, and you know how expensive it can be if you let a small thing turn into a big thing, which can happen if the check engine light stays on for too long. So how many of you are doing that with your health, where you may have a check engine light that's on, you don't realize it's on, but there's this underlying, there's certain things aren't going as great as they should be able to. I hear these stories about how all of my friends, and they're doing amazing, and they're living life the way they want to, and they can do whatever they want, and I'm over here like, but I'm where I might have to go to the bathroom, or my body just doesn't handle this food very well, or I don't do well when I'm in this environment.
Taking a medication for such and such,
taking all
but I
these
didn't realize I
medications.
had to.
Right, those are all check engine lights. And so if the check engine light is on for your body, why aren't you figuring out exactly why that check engine light is on?
Hey, wait a minute. I know why. They didn't know the connection between them. If you didn't know heart disease is caused by heavy metals, would you go looking for it?
Probably not.
But now you have no excuse.
Exactly.
You now know the research. I mean, we pulled several articles. This is the International Journal of the Environmental Research on Public Health, Mercury Exposure and Heart Disease. This was the International Symposium of Functional Medicine. Mark Houston, MD, wrote an entire article, Mercury and Cadmium and Their Heart Disease Effects.
Yeah,
What do you have here?
Journal from the American College of Cardiology, a medical journal.
Which says that heavy metals, cardiovascular disease, and the unexplained benefits of chelation. Guys, the medical profession knows this, but they don't want you to know, because if you get these metals out, your heart gets better, your energy gets better, your brain gets better, your liver gets better, your intestines get better, your nerve system can get better. And if you saw a functionally integrated physician who connects the dots for you, stimulates your spinal functionality, decreases the swelling around your intestines, chelates and cleans out your liver and the metals, you basically then healed yourself and you had a coach help you with that. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. We have to end our show based on times, but it's the last minute, right? Last second. Text the word heart, your name and email to 704-906-2094. The book is yours. The masterclass on the 11th is yours. 704-906-2094. We'll see you guys next week.
Keep healing, everybody. Have a great weekend.